Hi, everybody. This is Sarah, Pearls of Wisdom and Food with Friday with a Friend. And today's a very exciting day because I already feel like I've gotten to know this man. His name is Brett Lloyd. And I don't know if you watched your OMAD interview with him, but he did, I think it was an hour and 12-minute interview with him about a month ago. And he and Mike dove deep into a lot of different things. And so, in just talking with Brett now, he has so much insight. If there's nothing that you take from this except how insightful he has become and how the clarity, I mean, I just felt like it was the clarity of from low carb, high fat to keto to carnivore. And his brain is just, there's less fuzz. It's sharp, it's quick. And I got so much of that from him with his interview with Mike. And so today, I want to welcome Brett, and we'll just take not as deep a dive into the past, but we'll kind of take a deep dive into today. Welcome, Brett.
Good morning, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk with you and your subscribers.
It's going to be fun. And when I saw his 100% non-vegan, I had to get my powered by ketones with my steak, eggs, cheese, and bacon. And this is I'm not usually dressed in my t-shirts, but this one is a special one, and I'm premiering it today with Brett. So just so you know, it's like he's a special person. And so Brett. Um, I told him that I wanted to talk about his food journey, his today food, and what his rituals, the routines, supplements, things like that, things that he used to do, might do still, and all of that. So if I ask a provocative question, maybe I'll get like those 20 or 30 minutes out of him where you don't even see me open my. So, Brett, sometimes people start at how great they feel. Sometimes people go backwards, like wherever you'd like to start with the food journey and the aha of low carb to keto to carnivore.
Wow. Let's see. This is a different approach, so it's going to be interesting. Let's go backwards. Um, I grew up, my parents had an enormous vegetable garden. We were not vegetarians. Meat was present in every meal, lots of meat. But we had the typical standard American diet. I had fresh vegetables year round, fresh potatoes year round. The only thing that saved me from getting really sick sooner was the fact that I was an athlete. I was pretty dedicated to being an athlete. So I was in great physical condition, but with the 2020 hindsight vision I have now, I can look back and see that I started experiencing depression symptoms as early as age 15. Uh, got out of high school into college. My diet changed to beer, pizza, fast food. Not surprisingly, and again, I was completely unaware of this at the time, but my illness began to get worse. My decision making skills kind of went down the drain. Life choices became, why did that go wrong? I thought I had it figured out. I don't understand why this venture failed. It's because I was becoming more and more sick, depressed and whatnot. And in the 1990s, when I was finally diagnosed, I had been on a fast food sandwich, a lot of meat, but enormous amounts of Franken foods, grains, breads, margarine. I was a margarine freak. I loved the taste of margarine over butter. Um, Foolishly became a country crock junkie. um, and I was first
Rock.
diagnosed in 1990 with major depression. And the only thing that they talked to me about diet was the fact that my triglycerides were high, not how it related to mood. And so I didn't really pay much attention. I was 30 years old and still thought I was basically invincible. But in 1995, I did start taking antidepressants. Food didn't really change for me except the sicker I got, the more I gravitated towards sweets. And I was so sugar addicted. It's really hilarious when I look sadly hilarious when I look back at it now, because I was addicted to microwave popcorn, and at the same time I was addicted to Altoid mints. Because Prozac gave me dry mouth. So the mints, I convinced myself, were an antidote to that, besides the fact they were incredibly delicious and I couldn't walk around without one in my mouth in any waking moment. Um, so I gained a lot of weight, but I never attributed getting my illness getting worse to food. Neither did any physician who I saw. Um, Fast forward through to 2015. In January of 2015, I weighed 289 pounds. My doctor was telling me that I should seriously consider electroshock therapy and or long-term hospitalization because my depression was almost out of my control completely. Um, and I was miserable. And I have to tell this part of the story for it to make sense. A dear friend of mine, I'm a musician, and this lady and I have a music project that we work on. She sings the vocals, and I do the rest. But she suggested that I look into medical cannabis. And my wife and I did a little research and found some anecdotal stuff. And I talked about, we were like, what do we have to lose? Because I'd been on so many medicines for so many years, and I just got worse. All the while still eating more and more garbage, not knowing that that was the root cause of everything. So the cannabis treated my symptoms. It didn't eliminate them. I had to use it just like you would any other medication. But it was, I could engage in a pleasant conversation with somebody again without misinterpreting everything they said, because the illness wasn't filtering anymore. Then about 10 or 12 days into that, my mind cleared up enough that one day I'm tying my shoes and I realize my belly's in the way and I'm short of breath. And I'm like, what in the world? How did this happen? I knew I was big. I had no idea I was that large. Nowhere close to that. I knew I thought double X size sweatshirts. Well, I was wearing triple and 4X sweatshirts in reality. I had a 42-inch waist. And I immediately jumped up and told my wife, I said, this is changing. I'm going back on, because in the 2008, 2009 to 2010, I did go on the Atkins diet, but it wasn't for mood. It was because I had gained so much weight. And there had been changes in my life. I'd come to accept some things that I thought at the time were direct contributors to my depression getting worse. So 2009 into 2010, I had an almost normal year because I was low carb, but we did not make the connection. Got through my 30-year high school reunion. You see the pictures. My affect is great. I'm in an outstanding mood, lots of energy, happy guy. And then I'm at mass on a Sunday evening. I start eating things I liked again, got away from it. I'm at mass one Sunday night, happy as I could be to be there. And right before consecration, a voice goes off in my head, says, if you don't get home in the next 15 minutes, something really bad's going to happen. And I literally ran out of church. Very atypical for me. 15 minutes later, I'm home, curled up on my couch, bawling like a baby and don't know why. And that's when things got horrible. So the journey to wellness and to eating better began that February in 2015 when cannabis alerted me, cleared me enough to see, dude, you're a heart attack just seconds from happening. So I started low carb and I started walking the dog. At first, it was just a block here or a block there. And then that became 2 blocks. And then it became 4 blocks. And then it said, Well, I wonder how far I'm walking. So I got to map my walk program. And I'm like, well, geez, that's a quarter of a mile. That's not really that far at all. Next thing I know, I'm walking 1 or 2 miles a day and the pounds are coming off somewhat. Uh, how much better I was getting between the cannabis and the low carb, high fat. By the end of 2015, I was off all the antidepressants and mood stabilizers. By the end
Mm.
of 2016, I was off the Ativan that I'd been taking for 8 years for anxiety, as prescribed. Stuff terrified me. And an aside with the Ativan, it took me 6.5 months to titrate off of it. And the day after I took my last dose, I woke up with vertigo. It took 3 months to get rid of. And I feel certain that was a repercussion from the Ativan. At the end of 2017, I was off the insomnia meds. I'm now today 58 years old, medicine free, completely. Nothing, no pharmaceuticals of any kind. Through the course of the low carb thing, the first 2 years I did what I remembered Atkins to be. Now I'm still not well through this. I'm making baby steps in wellness. So my logic with this wasn't what it should be. And then I did drop like 40 pounds, like fairly, over about 4 or 5 months. But then some of the dollar stores in the area started carrying white chocolate at an affordable rate.
At an affordable rate.
At an affordable rate. And I was still, I wasn't eating bread hardly at all. I was focused on fruit. The exercise was really probably the big reason. And I stopped eating the cakes. I used to be bad for cakes and ice cream because when I was so sick, that was the only time that I felt almost kind of good, is when I'm feeding that addiction and maintaining it and all that. So the low carb journey got kind of interrupted there in the latter part of 2016 into 2017 until the spring of 2017. I had to have blood tests. I found out I had hypothyroidism and that I was pre-diabetic and my blood pressure was starting to creep up. And this doctor wanted me to put me on statins right then. And again, a little voice in my head, a little light went off, said, no, 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 no. I looked at him, I said, I'm going to come back in 6 months and we'll take the test again. But between now and then, I'm going to attack this with diet and exercise. And the man looked me right in the eyes there and said, 90% of all people cannot do what you're wanting to do. They cannot change their lab numbers. And in retrospect, that was one of the greatest things he could have ever said to me, because at that moment I thought, you SOB, you just watch. You just watch. So then I got serious about it. I eliminated sugar entirely, not knowing that sugar was part of the cause of my illness. I'm not, my father's diabetic. He's 81. He's been giving himself shots for the better part of the last 20 years. So I suddenly had a clear image of what my future was going to be if I didn't make a radical change. So then I increased the walking. The 1 or 2 miles a week became 5, and then 10, and then 20. What I used to start out with is a half a mile walk became a 2 mile walk, and then it became a 3. And then I would have a routine where I'd start the morning off with my 3 mile walk and then walk a mile with my wife before she went to work. And it just got crazy. At the height, the most I did was like 11 or 12 miles in a day and 41 in a week. But then my knees started saying, hey, dude,
Can't win.
you're getting a little out of control here. You need to practice a little moderation. Then fast forward to May of last year. The same dear friend of mine who suggested I look into medical cannabis messages me one day and says, oh my gosh, you got to go watch every video this man's ever made. And it was a link to Dr. Jordan Peterson. I didn't know anything about the man, but I've watched some of his lectures and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's saying stuff I've been thinking feeling for years but couldn't articulate. And so it became kind of a hobby to find new Jordan Peterson videos. And I ran across this 30-minute cutout that he did of a Joe Rogan interview earlier in the year where he described beautifully how his daughter healed herself of her depression and arthritis by eating beef, salt, and water. And my first thought was, well, that's kind of nuts. But then he said, I didn't know that he also suffered from severe depression, had been fighting it all of his life. And then he starts talking about how, yeah, it's his symptoms went away and his anxiety's 80% better and improving every day because he hadn't been on it that long. So when a gentleman who I believe has impeccable integrity, and part of his whole shtick is being truthful and honest, I have my jaw's on the floor. My wife comes over. I'm like, watch this. Tell me if I'm seeing and hearing this right. That he's really saying you could do this. And she's like, well, yeah, that's what he's saying. So I started going on a YouTube search binge for carnivore diet. And then I find Sean Baker's episode. I must have watched the dietary portion of that 50 times, Sarah, because this is just too good to be true. This is too easy. This can't, I mean, my mind was like fighting it so hard. This can't be real. I'm setting myself up for failure here. But the more I looked into it, it's like, there's no flaws in their logic. Everything they're saying to me, that just makes a little sense. It makes perfect sense. Then I was blessed to run into an Amber O'Hearn video from the 2016 or 17 Keto Fest, where she describes in a way that a guitar player could understand how we deviated millions of years ago from the apes and what we had to eat in order to facilitate that. And then when you start learning when we only ate meat, our bones were bigger and stronger. Our brains were bigger than they are now, in fact. Well, gee, many Christmas people, I got to do this. I looked at my wife and said, I absolutely have to do this. And so July 16th was the first day I began living carnivorously. And since that day, I have only eaten meat and I only drink water. And I have never been so blessed. Every facet of my life has been improved, not by a little bit, but immensely. 10 days into the experience, I woke up and I didn't have joint pain. Sarah, I didn't know I had joint pain. I thought I just had aches and pains because I was 57 at the time. I bumped into things. I broke a few bones along. I fell down and went boom a couple of times. You know, it happens. But I was never somebody, I can't, I didn't walk with a limp. I was able to get around. I didn't think anything of it. But when you wake up without it for the first time in your adult life, I felt like a 10-year-old kid wanting to jump around. It doesn't hurt. Day 23 into day 24, my depression symptoms left. It was the most beautiful, profound thing I've ever experienced short of my baptism and seeing my son born. It just something I can get emotional about it if I get too deep into it. But it was just, when you've not felt joy that wasn't chemically created for almost 40 years and suddenly you get to feel it for real, man, that's beautiful. And that's why I do these, because I want everybody else who's been suffering, because I know I'm not unique in this. Depression is so terribly prevalent in our society today, and I believe it's because of the garbage we've been taught to eat. You take the garbage out, you lose the inflammation, your body, your hormones come into balance, things work right again. It's not magic. It's not something special or unique. It's what we were designed to process. So that brought me to today. I've lost so many ailments I didn't think would ever go away, like skin tags. I'm almost 100% free of them. I got two or three that just won't quite go away yet, but I feel certain in time they will. My dry skin, I used to have horrible dry skin on my elbows and my ankles and the top of my head, cracked skin on my ankles and my heel. I'd use a ton of lotion every day just to not want to dig at it. It's all cleared up. 100% cleared up. Not a little bit better, but it's gone. Just gone. I used to suffer from hemorrhoids. They're gone. I never heard of that. They're gone. So I just eat meat and I drink water, and I don't feel a need to ever change that.
That is such a great, great story that you told. And you have, like I said before, I don't know if we were on air at the time, your insight into what you were doing is incredible. And what I love is you have a wonder of the fact that, all these things that went away that you kind of just felt you were living with, and how many of us over 50 live with chronic pain, or in my case, it was bronchitis 6 or 7 times every single winter. You just live with these things figuring, well, that's just how it goes. Forget the weight, just what we just figured was part of our package. And then all of a sudden, all of these things, are lifted, like you were saying. Um, did was the doctor on board with what you were doing with the carnivore?
I haven't been back to see that man since the last time, the day he looked me in the eye and said 90% of people can't do what you're wanting to do. My hypothyroid symptoms were gone within 6 months, just purely from the dietary change and the exercise. It's gone. It was a non-issue. I stopped taking the meds. I did a little research. I didn't just cold turkey it. I titrated off of it responsibly. But I haven't had any of those symptoms at all. And I part of me wants to spend the money to go back for a physical, just so I could look him in the eye and say, you were wrong. And this is what else you're wrong about. But that's really kind of petty. And I'm a little better man than that now, because I don't need to prove I'm right. I just need to show by my example. I'm living proof that this works. And it doesn't just work for me. It'll work for anybody who does it, if you have the patience and you're sick and tired enough of being sick and tired.
What's fascinating to me is hearing your story and then other people's stories, and it's just like the moment that the seed is planted, we might not even know that the seed is planted, and then there we are watching this video of this person who suffers from incredible depression. So does his daughter, and it's just like, how do we get led this way? If you don't think that's a spiritual awakening, a non-scale victory of the biggest kind, right? I mean, the way you tell your story, it is nothing less than a spiritual awakening. I see you as an egg, as a bird inside of an egg, making little cracks, and it's like, I'm coming out, and yes, you did. So walk us through from when you wake up, your daily routine. I'm fascinated to see how you do your daily do.
It is very simple. It is incredibly simple. That's part of one of the reasons why I love living this way, in addition to everything else. But every morning, I eat this every day, 7 days a week, no variance. And I'm going to qualify all of it by saying every bite of every meal I have is like the most delicious experience I could ever imagine. It's better than the sweetest cake, the cherry you've ever popped in your mouth, that I ever popped in my mouth. Every bite is delicious. And I'm completely satisfied at the end of every meal. And I don't think about food again until the next time I'm hungry. But I begin every morning around 5 a.m. I fry 5 to, depending on the thickness of the bacon, 5 to 8 slices of bacon every morning. And I have 8 ounces of 90-10 ground beef. I was cooking in baking fat, but now I've switched back to salty butter. I think my tongue just wanted a little change in flavor. I'm really enjoying it. And that's what I have for breakfast, and it's what I have for lunch. Sometimes for lunch, I'll use a different brand of bacon just for little taste variants.
That's
For,
funny.
for dinner, I have, she fixed it 10 or 12 ounce. It's 20. Okay. 16, do the math here in my head. So she fixes, yeah, my wife, it's a 12 ounce 90-10 ground beef patty with the same amount of bacon and water. Although for dinner and lunch, I usually have fizzy water because that's living high on the hog when you've got a soda stream and you can have fizzy water. Because one of the things Peterson said, it is so true. He said, when you're living like this, there's fizzy water, then there's kind of fizzy water, there's regular water, there's ice cold water, and then there's hot water, and that's it. That's all there is. So that fizzy really kind of makes it a little bit better, I guess. But that's all I eat. At night,
Salt? Do you put salt on the food?
I do. I cook with salt. I don't overly size salt to taste. Once in a while, I'll put a little salt in my hand, but just like, one shaker's worth and lick that off because I know that sodium deficiency can be a problem for some folks. Plus, oh gosh, my phone just fell off. I'm so sorry. Our first casualty of the day. His phone fell on the floor. All right, so if I get the stand going, that's never happened before. Sorry about that.
No problem. What kind of salt do you use?
I'm a bull. Oh, I have to take this call. I'm sorry. Can we hit pause for just a minute, please?
Sure.
Thank you. And you'll understand why. Hello. Thank you so much, Michael. I was expecting your call. Thank you. I'm doing very well. I'm actually in the middle of a video conference. You're going to deliver my medicine today? Yeah, 10:30 to 12:30. Beautiful. We'll see you when you get here. Thank you. All right, bye. I'm a legal patient.
I didn't have a pause button, so
It's okay. It's no big deal. I'm a legal cannabis patient in the state of Florida, and I'm having some medicine delivered, and they always called to confirm, and there was no way to avoid. Couldn't tell them, don't call me.
Right.
Then
so I was asking you, what kind of salt do you use?
We use sea salt, the kind you grind. We don't use the Himalayan pink, we just use your basic sea salt, unprocessed, no iodine or any of that nonsense in it, and salt to taste primarily. No real need. I never was somebody who salted everything before I ate it. It's not really an issue. I know for some people it can become one.
Now I want to ask another question.
Sure.
You're cooking your burger and you've got the bacon. Same pan?
No. I make the bacon in an air fryer. It's
okay.
So much faster. Oh my gosh, it's so much faster and less mess and aggravation. Now my wife, who's also carnivorous, she's a month behind me. She sometimes will make a burger, and the way the air fryer is, you can put the bacon up top and then cook the burger underneath it so the bacon grease drips down on the burger. That's really tasty too if your bacon grease is your thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you put the bacon grease on your burger.
Well, no, I would cook it. I would actually, when I was cooking with bacon grease, I would just put some bacon grease into the pan, add the salt, put the meat in, start cooking. And now that I'm not cooking with bacon grease, I just put about a tablespoon, a little more of not margarine. Can't even believe that word came out.
Isn't that funny? Crockpot addict that you are.
Bad mouth.
Really?
Muscle behavior, muscle learning.
Naughty.
Shame on me. I'm going to get a demerit from Sean Baker for that. You wait and see.
Yeah, I was just listening to his interview with Jimmy Moore this morning. I work overnight at a police department, so I get to listen to videos if it's quiet.
Right.
if it's not quiet, I earn every penny.
I'm sure you do, and God bless you for that kind of work. That's
Well,
really
it's
important
all
stuff.
interesting. But my next question was, is it sounds like a conscientious decision to buy 90/10. Is
It's
that
very,
because you have the butter or the bacon? And
here's why the 90/10 became a thing. One of the things that I've noticed is when we go into meat department, first off, it's really wild going into a grocery store now because on the way to the meat department, I describe walking through the valleys of death.
no kidding.
Smelling that sugary, horrible. I never imagined that the smell of sugar would become so sickening to me, but it really is awful. But we get to the meat counter, and I literally get excited like a kid, and beautiful cuts of meat just sing to me, literally. And you know, pork doesn't sing to me as much, but boy, it tastes good. But I don't really crave it. But I know if I had to, I could thrive on it. But I believe because I'm still healing, that's why really red, protein rich meat just screams at me. And my wife and I are out on a weekend supply run, and we're at Sam's, and they have these tubes of this 90/10 ground beef. Now, I probably had seen them before, but I wasn't far enough along in the process yet. But about a month and a half ago, we saw these things, and I knew immediately, instinctively, I had to eat that. And Sarah, it has been the most satisfying meat I've ever consumed. I mean, I am satiated, doesn't he? I'm content. It's like, oh, okay, that's done. Every need has been met.
It's
And I
saying,
believe it's because of the healing.
yeah, I haven't had pork for about a month. What I have beef every day. I just I'm like you. I like my beef, although I do because I'm still keto. I have a keto pizza on Saturday, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm beef 6 days a week, 5 days a week, and I never get tired of it. So I'm very um, very low carb, high meat. Myself carnivish,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I know what you mean about getting excited when you go when you go in and you go to I call it well, I watched The Last Alaskans. It's a show, and this married couple, she kind of like pushes him like get out there and get me a bison or something like that or something like that. And all she talks about is like she's about 60 and she says meat, go get me some meat. And it doesn't she's not as demanding sounding as that, but if I was him I'd take it as a demand. But
Right.
I call it my Edna gathering because I'm going meat shopping, and so it's kind of funny. I get excited like that too.
Well, I've talked to other carnivores, and it's a common thing. And everybody talks about how much fun it is to go to the store now because you're only going to one counter, maybe two if they have a seafood counter. Now, my wife, she does eat a lot of seafood. She likes to eat a lot of different meats. And it's my experience that women tend to eat a greater variety of meats than men do. Men will be more likely to focus on one or two kinds, their favorites, and then that's all they tend to eat. But it's really incredible. I think, you know how we know little children don't want to eat vegetables because it's encoded into our DNA that stuff's not good for us. That's not really food. That's famine, basically. If there's a meat famine, that's what you need to do just to get you to the next herd. Otherwise, don't put it in your mouth. But I also believe that we've been encoded the 180 degrees from that with regard to meat. Why else would we get excited? Why else would we know by look or what meat we should be, because our bodies direct us towards it if we clear the noise out of our heads enough to be able to understand it. It's really a fascinating experience because it goes completely against everything we were ever taught.
Isn't that the truth? Well, we're almost at 40 minutes, and I have one final question to you.
Sure.
Actually, it's a two-parter. It's in your social world, how do you handle being a carnivore? And two, do any people come to you and say, you look fabulous, you sound fabulous. How are you doing it? And really listen. So that's my two-part question.
I'll answer the second part first, and then you can ask me the first part again so I make sure I got it right. Because one of the only negative connotation to cannabis is it will mess with your short-term memory. I used to think, that'll get better. It really doesn't. So, but people reach out to me constantly since I first started telling my story publicly with the Carnivore Cast episode. That's where I it's very the most. I'll never be that real again when describing my experience. I'm told it's pretty inspiring. I'm still coming to grips with just that because I'm just a guitar player of no particular note. How could anything I do be inspiring? Anyway, people come to me very desperate. So I always take the time to explain things and as I can, as life permits. Because I was just like them not that long ago, looking for hope, desperate. I didn't believe I'd live to be 60. The thought I couldn't see past 60. Now, I have a future. I want everybody else to feel that way because nobody should have to be depressed. It's really easy to reverse once you stop eating garbage. So people tend to listen, to reach out to me, are desperate. They want to listen. One lady reached out to me because she had multiple sclerosis. She was told that she was going to spend most of the rest of her life in a wheelchair. She came to me desperate for information about carnivore. I shared with her my experience, what I knew, directed her to meatheals.com and the Zeroing In for Health group on Facebook, where you have 10 and 20-year vets who live this way, who know as much about it as anybody on the planet. Sarah, in 2 months, she lost all of her symptoms. Then she
Amazing.
fired that doctor who told her she was going to be in her wheelchair for most of the rest of her life.
Grr.
Exactly. That we could do a whole episode just on the medical community
Oh,
sometime.
we could. So the first part of the question was, how is your carnivory impacting your social circle?
Well, we don't really have much of a social circle due to the fact where we live. We don't have any family. It came down here because of my wife's work. And so we came in 100% blind. So we just it's our family, immediate. My wife, our son lives with us, and then I have a couple of friends, but they're all thrilled because they see the change in me. Uh, Socially online, my friends that I've grown up with who only interact with me online, many of them think, well, this is just another phase of Brett being, a little
Brett.
sick. Some of them,
That's
a few are genuinely happy about it, and the rest of them don't know what to think. But going out and eat, we never were much for going out because my wife has a lot of food allergies. Naturally, we knew before going in, and now, as you know, when you remove all those toxins, your body loses its tolerance to them. So we don't dare run the risk of accidentally introducing something into our symptoms because the price is just too high.
Yeah, and the
It's
cost of going out is too high to have a day of misery after, right? When you could go and buy a beautiful steak and have that together, right? In comfy clothes. To me, that's living as large as I want to live,
exactly.
you know.
Now we did go to a meetup. Went to our first MEAT up a couple weekends ago and got to eat dinner with 9 carnivores. But the restaurant knew no sides. Don't be bringing any of that nonsense. We don't want it. But it was funny because one of the ladies' children, who's not a carnivore, was there, and they were eating something. It was some carby something. And so the pictures were taken, and that was what you could people comment. The people who are against this all spotted that first. It was hilarious.
Hawkeyes.
Yeah, that was oh, I see carbs on that table. You all aren't really living this way, are you? You're right.
Oh my God. Okay, final question, and then we.
Yes, ma'am.
Who do you listen to on YouTube?
Oh gosh, a whole bunch of people. In addition to you and Mike and other carnivores who, I mean, there's Primal Edge Health, there's gosh, that's a list I need to write down. I watch a lot of Joe Rogan. I also like to watch a comedian named Joey Diaz who just cracks me up. I watch some other comedians too. Bert Kreischer's got a good podcast. Josh Wolf's got a great one. Um, and Sean Baker, I watch anytime he does something, I always watch it. I watch the Human Outliers Performance podcast religiously. I watch the two Keto dudes whenever they have somebody on whose name I recognize. Um, and the Carnivore cast pretty much every time there's an episode because I learned so much from the folks there because that's audio only.
Yeah.
And so stories tend to be more detailed and more intense. So that's
Well,
the
Mike
basic
turned me
list
on
for
to
now.
that. Mike from Carnomad turned me on to that, and he also turned me on to MD posts, which is also a listen only.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because we assign each other a video to watch and review. So when we do our Girly and the Cowboy, and he assigned me Georgia Eid on the MD post. So
Oh, I bet that was
we
I
haven't
think
we
I
haven't discussed it yet, and I assigned him um, Sean the HPO with Gary Taubes.
oh that is I'm going to watch that again.
You have
I've
to.
almost I've almost watched I've got like 15 minutes of it left. But I need to watch it again to process it all because there's so much there. And it is I had to do the same thing with when Dr. Kim Berry was on. If you haven't seen that episode, watch
I
that
have.
one. Because
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
had to go through it twice because it was not only full of information, it was hilarious too.
yeah. So I guess we watch a lot of the same. Don't forget Beating Obesity with Jim.
Okay, I'll keep that one in mind. I haven't
Yeah,
seen that.
that's one of Mike's friends.
Okay.
Beating
There's so
Obesity.
many, and I try to watch is because everybody's got a unique perspective on this. You know, one of the things that there's things about cannabis and carnivory that are very similar because they're very specific to the individual, the effects and how people do it and how you respond to it. So I'm always looking for new ways and seeing what other people are doing, even though I'm 100% satisfied with what is going on. Maybe in 6 months, oh, I feel certain this time next year I'll be eating differently in some way, but it'll still just be meat and water.
Yeah. And so that's why I like to listen to other people too, because you just never know. So I kind of have a block of my brain that kind of stores stuff because it's like you may not always think that way and then execute things that way. You just might not always.
I just can't see a rational reason for me to ever add any other plants or carbs. Sugar's definitely never being added back, but there's no essential carbs, and we know there's no essential fiber. So what's the need? Where's and my health is so important to me. I mean, I relish every moment of every day now. I mean, I hit the floor smiling, no matter if I'm 2 hours waking up 2 hours too soon for whatever sleep issue might, it's too hot that night. The dog woke me up, whatever it is. I get through my day without that horrible fatigue and oh my gosh, I got to carry out the trash. I don't have, it's just too much. I can't do it. It's all gone.
I have a carb addict friend, and she said, I washed my hair today. I'm exhausted.
I hear that.
Telling you, in the old days, I wouldn't wash my hair to stay home. You know, so I would just not wash my hair and stay home. Or, the crabbiness, the mood altering. Oh, those toxins in the standard American diet are so mood altering, and we don't even know it.
One quick thing, an epiphany I had during the meetup. There were 9 of us carnivores there. I had interacted with a couple of them online. and then my wife, and then a coworker of mine. Everybody else just complete strangers. I never met a nicer group of people who were more friendly and more open. And it dawned on me, if you're not inflamed, you're always going to be a nicer person to be around. Even if you're disagreeing with somebody, you're going to be a more pleasant human being to be around. And I
I
think
agree.
it's so sad that so many millions of us are walking around unnecessarily miserable, and they think it's normal.
And they
And
just wait for their scripts. You know, I'm sitting at Rite Aid waiting for my scripts. I'm, you know, going to the doctor to see if I can get my script altered. All right, so now we're getting long, and I don't want to.
you're the boss.
Yeah, this has been wonderful, and I've thoroughly enjoyed you, and I wanted to get that part of you, the food part, the food journey, the food relationship part, because there are a lot of sugar addicts here, and a lot of my favorite two keto dudes saying deranged metabolisms are here. And don't you love that saying?
That's a
And
good
how
one.
dare you call me deranged? And so I think they'll get a lot out of you. And I have so many keto and carnivore and somewhere in the middle. And so your story just tells a little bit more, a little bit better, you know, the benefits. One of the things that I find about the carnivore community is how welcoming they are. And I think that they've done such a great a journey with all the horrendous stuff. Then it's getting ketos better, but by the time they hit carnivory, they're just it's heaven to them. And so, you know, I sense that from you too, and sharing that the joy that emanated from almost 50 minutes of you. Great. So I think we learned a lot today. And I emailed you before this show and asked you to send me all your contact info. So I'll put it below. And so they'll have all different kinds of ways. Because I know you just started a YouTube channel. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. I'm not really advertising that very much just yet.
Okay.
I didn't. That's why I didn't include it.
Okay.
Because, in honesty, revealing moment, making news. I'm in working in development with a lady who's a keto person on a podcast that we're going to do. It's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes long. We're going to talk about one or two issues every time, and she's going to talk about from her keto perspective, and I'm going to talk about it from my carnivore perspective.
Oh, that'll be excellent.
And she's got a very powerful story of her own. I'm not even going to reveal one detail of it. It's just it'll be worth people will be impressed. She's an impressive lady, very articulate, 5 or 6 years younger than me, but she's come through the fire, and we're going to
That's
call
a
it
great tease.
the
So you'll have
Ketovore
to,
cast.
huh?
The Ketovore cast, I think, is what we're going to call it.
Oh, awesome. All right. So I'm going to close this out and say goodbye to our viewers. Brett, this has been a total joy to do this with you. And, you know, I hope that people contact you in any of those contact information, social media things that you send me to add on. And so thank you so much for being here, Brett. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. Peace be with you and all your viewers always.
Thank you. I'm just going to close us out.